I
All
don't even know the
right.
questions.
That's all right. All right, Brent Saccucci. Dramatic countdown over. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I am happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
I am elated to have you. So we're just talking, definitely talking no smack about education systems, just then you and I before starting our call. And I guess first off, tell me a little bit about your maybe initial reasoning for kind of wanting to get into education, how you kind of end up at the University of Lethbridge and what you're kind of teaching, and what kind of made you go from teaching high school, enjoying it, and being like, I want to pursue more. And what was that you wanted to pursue?
That's a good question. I mean, I have known I wanted to be a teacher since kindergarten, which are like those insufferable people. Yeah, I know. I
To
find them
these
so
sounds of
annoying.
letters, I am here.
I know. I remember like being in that space and thinking, this is the time of my life. Like I'm having a hoot in kindergarten. I'd come home every day and and now you hear about like kids being really torn to leave their parents and
Yeah.
stuff around the first
You're
day.
like,
And
feel it
I
here.
was like, I'm good. I'm actually like I would stay with her, through the week if you guys would let me. I think that school is magical. I really do. I believe in that still today about like what I deeply believe about school is like it's about social emotional learning and it's about academic skills. And so I do like a lot of work. Even when I was like growing up, I did like lots of student leadership stuff. I'm very like camp counselor coded.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I mean?
fine.
I'm very like
Yeah.
that gay theater kid who's like, yeah, well, let's go around and give a rose and a thorn. Like that is just me at baseline and it's earnestly who I am. And so I have this like kind of extroverted personality that is really well suited for teaching and or what we stereotypically know as like teaching that as well. And so I hit the ground running like right after high school. I went into an ed program at U of A and I loved my student teaching and I wanted to keep learning. So I did a master's at OISE at the University of Toronto, where I studied like queer teacher mental health in schools and helping like I did some work called MAD studies and the cultural study of emotion and curriculum theory. And I thought this is so fun. I want to do a PhD. And
Yeah.
then so I started that at U of
Bold.
A. Yeah. And taught some student teachers. I left that program. I'm doing a different doctoral program now, but taught at U of A student teachers, and I taught at UBC as an adjunct prof in social justice education. And I loved that work a lot. I really enjoyed working with teachers, but I didn't have a drive to become an administrator. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to be necessarily outside of the classroom. And so I love teaching high school. I love my school. I love my principal. That's also like insufferable to hear, I know. If you're like,
Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Luxy. That's Luxy. Luxy is the standard for modern dating as it gives you a greater understanding of any potential match's intentions and background before you make your move. Swiping endlessly in other dating apps can be exhausting and often leave you with only the leftovers in your dating pool. Luxy is an exclusive platform with just a 10 to 15% acceptance rate, as well as a profile and income verification feature so you can be confident you're only connecting with those who meet your high standards. The community guidelines emphasize safety, trust, and equality by strictly prohibiting scams, explicit content, and harassment. 2025 is your year to stop settling. With Luxy, there is no luck involved, just real connections with people who truly match what it is you are looking for. Download the Luxy app today to see if you qualify for a better chance at finding the right person for you. And now, back to the show. Mr. Clark After Dark is also brought to you by leverageassistance.com. What could you do if you had a free full-time personal employee for your small business for a whole month? Whether you're an education consultant, solopreneur, or just building an ed tech startup or have a separate small business of your own, you understand how a great idea can turn into a litter of monotonous tasks. Creating content, managing clients, pitching new work, and then somehow still answering emails is just too much for one person. That is where Leverage Assistance comes into play. They give you highly vetted, full-time business operations specialists for just $3,000 a month with no hidden fees. That's less than a third of the cost of hiring one full-time employee to do anything that you need to customize to your business needs. Each assistant is put through a 12-hour vetting process with reference checks, AI tools training, and a behavioral fit assessment. You're not just hiring help, you're gaining a strategic partner. Try it for free at leverageassistance.com. That's leverageassistance.com. in the description below. Focus on your zone of genius and let them handle the rest. Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Lean Fit Supplements. Teachers, you give everything to your students, your time, your energy, and even your sanity. But who is fueling you? Lean Fit is here to help you stay energized, focused, and feeling your best, whether you're powering through lesson plans or just surviving recess. From clean protein powders to daily wellness boosters and my personal favorite, the vanilla protein, Lean Fit has your back. Click the link in the description to get 25% off your first order today. I love my admin.
Like, seriously, isn't that funny?
I've honestly only worked for great ones as well. Like, you always hear horror stories, and I'm probably like ass kissing super hard, but I'm like, I just feel like most principals want, or most admin just kind of like want to let you do your thing. And I feel like as long as you're being open about like things you're not, like I was mentioning to you before, like I'm in a new area, I'm fish out of water. I mean, I guess maybe I fish back in the water going back to the East Coast, but and I'm all smoked and dried out from all the forest fires. And I'm always going up to the principal and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I'm asking right now, but this is kind of what I'm feeling. This is kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm like, I always try to look for guidance. I might still make the same mistake tomorrow, even though I just asked you, but I think that's part of usually they're pretty open to trying to guide, like for the most part. I haven't really met like a tyrannical principal that's like, no, my way or the highway. Like if your lesson plan's not on your forehead, then like you're fired. Like I haven't really had that experience myself.
No, I haven't either. And I think like maybe it's because we're like intuitive about where we work, like, or intentional too. Like, I don't think it's just happenstance. Like you know, I knew that who was the administration at my current high school that I'm at. Because right now I'm in this nebulous spot where I teach at the university at night and I teach full-time during the day, high school English, which is just happening until the end of June. July 1st, I'm full-time at the university. But
nice. Congrats. That's sweet.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome.
And so it's like, but I'm going to miss the high school. I'm going to miss the community of a school. You know what I mean? But the student teachers are so fun too. I do such cool stuff with them. And I bring my high school students to my university class. And then
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so what kind of things were, because that's kind of a good kind of segue here, because I'm curious about two things. Like, obviously, everyone who's still, I haven't done any graduate work myself. And like, I don't, like, part of me is like, okay, no, I want to go course based because like, I don't know what I don't know. You know what I mean? And so like, I want to try and figure that out. So like, what are kind of the things that you were maybe surprised that you did know once you started teaching student teachers? You're like, oh, I actually know that pretty inside and out. Like, that wasn't a question I had, but like, what do you kind of see yourself as? Not like the passing on of wisdom and knowledge, I guess, but like you're kind of working with the student teachers, but like, what do you kind of see as, I'm just going to leave that there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't see myself as like me here, student teachers here, and like this baton passing. Like I don't call them, you know, students. I say my colleagues. I address them as colleagues. They're entering a profession that I'm a part of and a member of. And so we're making like our classroom, I don't call it participation as much as professional collaboration. Like, so I think like I am excited because I've always been in between the university and the school system, like existed in this space between like whenever I'm at the university, then I'm in schools and then I go back and forth. And what's nice about where I'm at now is I'm, you know, leading a new cohort of student teachers who want to do social change work in schools and get to like be in schools in rural Alberta and like talk about what it means to do social justice.
Yep.
And so it's a cool spot to be in between theory and practice. However, like every graduate student, I thought like, maybe I don't know enough, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, I was like delusional in graduate school enough that I thought I'm delusional either way, whether I like think I know it or I think I'm not worth being here. Like both are a delusion.
I love that actually. It's like the antidote to imposter syndrome. Like I am delusional either way.
Totally. We are always. So I'm like, I might as well pick the delusion that fits me. So I'm like, we're just gonna go for it.
Choose your delusion, lay it on me. I'm going to keep going.
Choose it. And I felt that when I started teaching too. And I just also love the energy of student teachers. They're like, I believe oftentimes they are actually at the forefront of educational innovation.
Like student teaching is the most like stressful and inspiring time of my life so far. Like I remember feeling I don't think I've ever felt more stressed out. But like
Mm,
not in like a pressure way, not in like a teacher looking at me and like, no, like I'm giving you like an F on your evaluation. It's like I had such a almost like a self-imposed pressure to like change others, which is not obviously not the way that it should be, but that's kind of like no, like you should feel like you've learned so much from me because I'm your
right.
teacher. So I guess how do you kind of walk through the student teachers in that? Even for yourself, I mean, like the delusion part's good because that's kind of working for me already. Like, oh yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna be delusional. It's
Yeah.
fine.
We're all delusional. It's like I love that
That's the
part
title of the
of
podcast
student.
right there.
We're all delusional. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like when we find the title. That's my favorite part of doing podcasts and videos. I That's actually my favorite part. Like most faculty at U of L, we teach within similar to like U of A in the IPT, APT, when you have an on-campus portion. But the difference at U of A is that prof then usually stops seeing you at the end of the classwork portion. Then you go into schools. This in this model, we follow them into schools. So like we get a group of like 8 or 6 to 12 students, and we go and become those field experience consultants in the schools. And so I get to talk to you about stuff that we were talking about theoretically in class, in like what is the context in like Coutts, Alberta, versus like in Lethbridge or on a colony school. So we get to like actually see the theory get animated and come to life. And that is my favorite part of sitting down with student teachers. And I am often placed with, and this is just fine. It just often happens to equity seeking groups. I often get queer and trans student teachers. And because I've navigated that, I like passing on that knowledge too. But it's actually the same for any equity seeking teacher. The strategies that I've used to create actual change and stay in the profession. We know that like less than 10% of trans teachers stay in the profession after
Hmm.
2 years.
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
yeah, it's wild. And so the strategies I used, I was like, I should make a cohort out of this. And I pitched it. And my associate dean and dean were like, yeah, go for it. Because it's the same strategies to make these I really like helping like equity deserving student teachers stay in these schools.
Of course, absolutely. And I'm even wondering too, like, in what way can you potentially, because I would say for the most part, even though I would say there has been progress in terms of like, I don't see quite as many men, I guess, as principals, but
Mm,
98% of the time it's white women kind of taking that role now from what I've experienced for myself. And obviously I've only been in rural areas, so maybe that's possibly skewing that. But how would you potentially, advise, but if, have a discussion with maybe the principal of a school where a trans student teacher is going? Like what? Because it
mm,
almost seems unfortunately inevitable, because if you're not kind of fitting the mold that society wants like a teacher to be kind of from the get-go, what does that conversation look
totally.
like? How do you even prepare the student teacher for potentially like some of the things that they might come into contact with, and what things have you heard them come into contact with, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. Yeah, 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 for sure. I do. My like you said right out the gate, like it's truly as quick as like what do they call me, Mr. or Miss? Or like what do I introduce myself as? Do I make the first lesson with these kids about my pronouns? Like
And
I'm
I would
teaching
not have
math
even thought
30.
with the Mr. and Miss, because
Yeah,
I've always been,
right.
oh, Mr. Clark.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Which is fine. I think like there's a lot of moments. My like whole the spirit I bring to this work is that like this like whole staff does not need to undergo queer and trans equity training in order to have this student teacher. You actually don't need to get it at all. You don't need to get the whole gender thing. You can like we need to refocus from comprehension to compassion. Like you can not get it at all and do these things that support that student teacher. And it is not, there's no like PDF that I arrive with being like, hey, behind me is like a trans person. This is how to act. It is instead like, and I say this is what we all want when we're faced with a conundrum is someone to say, what do you need? What do you need? And any
It
student
really
teacher
is
needs their principal to say
dangerously
that.
simple for like,
Yeah,
just don't, I almost think like don't make it weird, like, and just another person coming in to teach. Like
totally.
it doesn't have to be weird. Like I'm here to teach.
Yes.
Like there's curriculum, I'm gonna try and build relationships, and that's the
Yes.
gig.
And I go into lots of schools and talk about queer and trans equity stuff. I was our district consultant for it and really loved the work. But a part of what I'm doing is also giving people permission that to just like trust your instincts with this. Like, you have all the tools for inclusion. You have just lost access to them. Someone who I look up to as a mentor, Jody Carrington, says that a lot around like,
It's
you
coming on the
have
podcast in June.
no way. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's so
Yeah.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's really, really cool. And she will say, like, you've lost access to these tools. It's not that you don't have them. So really all we're doing is making like the intuitive intentional. There's no like, I think it's
Make the
so
intuitive
prickly.
intentional. I love that.
Yeah, it's so prickly. It's so prickly to do and think about trans people right now. And I'm like, nah, you've been dealing with trans people for a long time.
Yeah.
You have a lifetime within you of gender knowledge.
Yeah,
You
that's
know it.
the counselor at my old school, who I believe is lesbian, is not trans, but she said, she's like, they think there's like a rising like explosion in like the number of like trans people. They're like, always been around. We're here. We've just been suppressing for a long time, and like she has a good humor about it, but it always comes with like almost like the empathy from, I guess, like our perspective of the like how unnecessary it is to need to hide yourself. And again, that's just me speaking on my own accord. And so this happened to me a few weeks ago, and I
Mm,
was in a class. I can't remember before. I can't remember how we were having. I think we were talking about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I
mm,
said something about like, trying to get them to think like, what do you think should be added and or removed? Just trying to like get some conversation going about like what is a right and what is not. And one of the students like immediately said, I can't remember for sure like word for word what they said, but how these like people shouldn't be allowed to be trans. And like I was like,
mm,
whoa. Like in the moment, I'm just
mm-hmm.
in the moment as a teacher, you're almost kind of like, okay, now I'm in damage control mode because now you're trying
Right.
to like prevent the eruption from the disruption. And like I kind of went on to just like explain differing perspectives and like how everyone is entitled to kind of embody themselves as their own individual. And I usually it always kind of contradicts, like in my opinion anyway, if you kind of say things like that, you're actually contradicting the idea of individual rights and freedoms because it is their right
Right.
to express themselves that way. But anyway,
Right.
that usually falls apart pretty quickly. But from your perspective, how would you handle a situation like that?
I mean, I often pose them back to like, when you say we go into damage control, I agree. I think that people are looking for, like, in that moment, like a PR consultant or like maybe someone from HR, where I'm like, no, that's a teaching moment. And in those moments, like, how do I teach you? Like, my philosophy is a lot of inquiry based learning. So I would not explain, and I would be like, say more. Like, where did you get that idea? Does that idea belong to you? Did you inherit it? I often ask. Are you willing to be wrong? And that's like within the first two questions is, are you willing to be wrong? And if the answer is no, then that's fine. There's just no conversation there anymore. And so I have to ask myself too, am I willing to be wrong? Because if I'm not, then there's also no conversation at all on my end. So I tell them, like, there's something I'm not willing to argue that like sexism is real. It's like not something I'm doing anymore. I'm not willing to be wrong. And there are things I am willing to be wrong about. And sometimes those intellectual debates can be really useful. Like, students have like pushed back on my pronouns before, and it's been like generative dialogue. But I often start with like questions of, where did that come from? And does it belong in here? And I get students to respond to it. Like, that affected the room, not me. Something shifted in the room. Students, what do you think? Let's hear from three people how that landed, because they're more accountable to them than they are to me.
Yeah, because that's something I've noticed is that I almost feel as a teacher because I agree that is very much a teaching moment. Like that's kind of the point as to why we have those topics in
Mm-hmm.
schools, as we can actually teach and learn about those things together. But it's almost, so I'd say it's probably happened about 5 or 6 times when a
Right.
student makes a comment like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to start making theories about energy in the room, but you sense it flip on a dime. Like the second a
Totally.
comment is made like that, you're like, okay. Like, and almost everyone's going to look to you to be the one to answer or to respond.
Totally.
I think I guess the way I would even advise is like, don't let the panic to respond change your answer. Like, don't just start talking for the sake of talking. Like, I almost kind of started to enjoy letting the kids sit in that feeling. Like, I would
Yeah,
just kind of
like
sit
the
and I'd be like,
discomfort.
yeah, like let's just acknowledge. And then usually what I would start doing is I started like writing the comment on the board. Okay, let's piece this apart. So I kind of think that separates it from both you and I kind of in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's parse it apart. And then I kind of would go into things like where does this idea come from? What is
Mm-hmm.
again, Ken Denhire, as I mentioned to you
Mm-hmm.
before, is like, what is the story that makes this make sense to them? Like, that's kind of always the origins that I go back to. But is that something that your student teaches? I guess, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts there?
I like that. I think that's a good intellectual exercise. My worry is like when we exercise things too much or stretch them out, like we don't need trans students in the room bearing witness to this entire thing. And so, like, in the spirit of trauma informed care, I often say, like, just be aware. Like, I would have looked
Mhm.
very like cis passing in that school and am non binary. And I would have, like, they would have been like, there's no trans students here. So we'll talk about it. And they wouldn't have known that I was in the room thinking they're arguing about the validity of my existence. And I am
Mm.
here to learn about like something else right now.
Yeah,
So that's like just my only
that's a
air
good
of
point.
caution. But teachers know that they can trust that that's in the room the same way that they don't know who's Indigenous in the room. They don't know, like, there's so much happening in the room that we can't see that like teachers are already thinking about that. But yeah, like I worry the same way that when we talk about like, should women like blank? And it becomes
Yeah.
like, let's use all these things. I'm like, do the women in the room like need to maybe like bear witness to this? I don't know. Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Or
That makes
are
sense.
they the ones who need to lead it? Like, do I,
Yeah. How do
or is
you
that
how would you find
unpaid
the way to
labor?
step aside? How would
Yeah.
you find the way to step aside there?
Yeah. This stepping aside is important. I do it a lot. Like, and students do push back, but I invite it. Like, I want there to be pushback in my room, but there are pushback within boundaries. There's a difference between discomfort, which is like good. It means learning is happening. Our learning edges are being stretched versus unsafety, which is like, we need to make a safety plan in order for you to like be in this space. So discomfort is like we talk about on day one, like how to distinguish the texture of those feelings. And for student teachers, I say that too. You're like going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, the
Now, if you're
texture of the
unsafe,
feelings. I
that's
like
different.
that. I like that.
Yeah, right. They're different textures.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for someone because it kind of goes another step further, because we're kind of also, that's like the classroom level, but then you have like the
Yeah.
school level.
Right.
So, for example, I was literally just reading earlier today in New
Mm-hmm.
Brunswick, there's a principal at a school. I think even in my district, I'm not sure where the community is. And
Mm-hmm.
a student was, I didn't get the whole story, but I think the core of it is that they wore a straight pride shirt to school and then were
Mm-hmm.
suspended for it.
Right.
And now there's like a petition to have the principal fired because of this situation. I'm sure this isn't the first time that you have heard of something like that
Mm-hmm.
happening. And I guess if you were maybe to be asked to come in like an equity consulting role, how do you kind of navigate that situation? What are the questions you're asking? Who are the people who you're talking to, and like what are the beliefs that you think can actually be challenged and potentially not changed, but I guess progressed?
That's a good question. That's often when I would get called. Is like after a crisis. And to which I often say, like, that's the worst time. You need to hire a PR and HR person. For that,
Okay.
you need to have me come in for doing culture work,
Hmm.
like way before. And so, but that is just the reality is like you get called when an incident
So
happens.
is it like
And a part of
preventative?
it,
Is that kind of what you're saying? Like
or like, yeah, and thinking about like school culture and belonging, which I am not really against like EDI language changing to belonging. That's what we were doing for a long time anyway. I think that it's become so prickly and polarized though that schools are like either afraid to bring in the conversation or only do so when there's a crisis. I mean, that's how I got my current job is I met them after that and did some consulting work at that school. And I think that schools can bounce back from it and that administrators can like learn from what they have done, and so can teachers. But it depends. Do you have a learning culture, or do you have a performance culture? Do we perform for each other's school?
So
Do
just
we
talk to me more about
perform
that.
Yeah,
Go into
do we
that more.
perform school for each other? Do we perform inclusion for each other? Do we do everything where we have like our pronouns hyperlinked in our email and a 2-paragraph land acknowledgement at the end of our email? Or do we perform inclusion, or do we enact it? And I think that the schools who are serious about getting gritty and muddy with the work have sustainable change. And sometimes people will find my sessions maybe like, I don't give 5 things that you can do that will make your school inclusive tomorrow. Because if I did give you that checklist, it would expire in 6 weeks. Like this movement is changing and being led by youth that are changing all the time. Instead, I'm trying to give schools the dispositions and attitudes to deal with a gender diverse world. Because if they think, Brent told me what trans is and what to do when someone wears a straight pride shirt and when this, and then a situation comes up and it's not like that, you're like, but
It
Brent
becomes
said,
like tool heavy rather than like compassion
right.
heavy in a sense.
And now you're sitting there thinking like, okay, is it 2S LGBT, 2, right? And now you're just not talking about us at all because
Yes.
you're so
Yeah.
nervous. So I'm instead now
Yeah.
being like, it's not about comprehension.
Hmm.
It's about compassion. You can do this
Yeah.
work. You have all the tools within you. And a lot of times it's giving people permission to feel the humanness of it. Like, why did you suspend that student? Something felt wrong about that. Let's like follow that intuition a little bit. And then they get to like, right, because what they're doing is putting a group of people in power, straight people, and saying that they need some affirmation or equity, which is not true. That's not equity. That's why I suspended them. And so I'm like, right. So you did have reasoning for it, but you acted in the moment. So I often like, I'm giving people the tools. I'm just making like the intuitive, what they did, more intentional. Like, this is why you did that. I can help you now think
Oh,
about your
okay.
actions. You reacted, I'll help us respond.
Okay. Yeah, because I almost feel like what you're saying about the people becoming like too afraid to talk about it because they don't want to get it wrong. I'll admit, like I've even been in that situation as a teacher where it's like sometimes a topic will come up and I'm like, I don't want to like skirt this and then almost like
Right.
accidentally say the wrong thing in the process of just trying to fit like and again, I think that comes from like a relationship standpoint. Like I know that my students know that I would never like intentionally say something to be inappropriate
Yes.
or to offend or someone like that. Because that's just I mean that's the opposite of teaching. I think if you're going to start espousing things like that, yeah, it's definitely. I guess something I'm wondering is that I guess even at my school now, and my old school, when it comes to what is meant by the work, like kind of for
Right.
EDI initiatives, and I think you even said EDI, and like we have DEI, like coaches in our district,
Right.
and like what does the work look like in practice? Because I guess the things that I think of is like, okay, we have GSA groups, we have like the optional kind of inclusion efforts, like we have do projects in social studies class, and that's kind of where it stays. And if anything, what even if you want to go down to the classroom level, like what types of projects do you think are like good for schools to potentially introduce something to kind of like start this work? And even like yourself, you're saying, oh, this expires in 6 weeks. How does that work? Like, what is the malleability of that work as you continue to progress in a certain context? If you kind of know what I'm getting at, like if you started a
Yes.
school, how does that change as you're growing with that school, and how does the school kind of change in response? So I threw a lot at you there, but I guess what are your thoughts?
I think like the need from the like, or at the core of that question, and the need from a lot of school is like, tell me the tips. What is the work? It is this nebulous, abstract idea, the work. And there is no like pretty Canva PDF that says like, this is the work. Achieve steps 2, 3, and 4, and the work will be done. And then you get the inclusion badge,
Yeah.
which is like,
Sorry.
and
That was funny.
I can, right. But I think that is what people want. I'm like, the work is like going to look different for everybody, which I realize is not a satisfying answer, but the work is not satisfying.
Yeah.
The work is
I
not
like that.
satisfying.
Yeah.
It is gritty. It is messy. I cannot package up real belonging and inclusion and be like, this is it. Just do it. It's not WHMIS training. Right. And so I'm like, I often will tell people that like the best way to understand if you're doing the work is like not, there's a million modules and asynchronous things that you can take,
Yeah.
but like inclusion is a felt sense. We all know people that like start a meeting off with a big land acknowledgement and then they go into like, let's check in with everyone's pronouns. And you're like, I know that I don't feel welcome here. And you're like kind of not a great person. Like that is inclusion. So they're
Like
performing.
not peacocking, but like kind of
Right.
the I'm gonna show that I'm like good in a sense, like which can
Totally.
it's not about the what you're saying, it's about how I feel about the way you're saying or how we what we really
Yes.
know. But yeah, because it's always, even for myself, it's always kind of been slightly disheartening. Like you have these conversations with people, and then like in private, like you hear them like just like drop the FAG word, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like whoa, like
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
does it? What just happened? Like this is not something
But
that
also
should like
like,
be in. But yeah,
but you can listen to stand-up comedians who like punch up on queer and trans communities
Mhm.
and are not queer or trans, but like they're you can feel underneath like, oh, you actually care about our community and you're still making a great joke about us. And actually both are possible at the same time because inclusion is felt. We can feel inclusion the same way that person that does EDI and all the other ways and we still don't feel welcome. We all probably have someone in our life, like a grandma, maybe, who does not know any of the words, who would say it all wrong, and who you know in a heartbeat, if you said, like, can this person come for dinner that you've never met? She would
yeah,
be like, grab a seat. Here's
yeah.
the food.
I'll
Stay
make
as
a
long as you
chair.
like. That's belonging, right? That's belonging. And so I'm like, what is the work? I think like here's one way to tell that I often give people as like a self barometer because the work is about self awareness. The best barometer to understand if you're doing the work of allyship is how uncomfortable are you during the day. Like, do you generally go through the day and you're like, yeah, like anti-black racism's not a problem. Like like I went to the photocopier, I went to the
Yeah.
like life's like generally good. And I would say to that, like, that is a decent barometer for that you are doing no real meaningful allyship for Black people around you. So the comfort that you feel is directly correlated with like how you navigate the world through power and privilege, and how you're being uncomfortable through the world is oftentimes indicative of how meaningful your allyship is. Like, did I actually stop the meeting and say, I'm just going to stop us there? We didn't do pronouns. It's important for me that we do that. That's uncomfortable. That is like a moment of allyship. I'm going to stop us right there. I feel like splitting into boys and girls doesn't feel great. Like, or did you let that moment pass?
Yeah.
So then you go through your day, you think, well,
It's always
gender's
the
not a
pressure
big
to
deal.
speak up. Do I or don't I?
Yeah, right. And all it takes is 3 seconds of courage, like to just be like, 1, 2, 3. Great. I have to say something.
It's
And
like
then it's done. It's in the room.
it's like the Mel Robbins. She had like her initial one that made her famous like 10 years ago was like the 5 second rule or something. It's like you count down from 5 and just do it. Like whatever,
Yeah.
like to get out of bed or whatever, like morning routine.
Yes.
Anyway, but it's like do like
Because there's
literally
no qualm.
do the count in your head and just say it. Like it's not even a like don't
I do
think
all
about
the
things.
time. Yes, I do all the time because there's no qualm. I've decided
Yeah.
ahead of time this is who I am. There's no qualm, do I go to the gym or not? I
Yeah.
decide ahead of time that's who
Yeah.
I am.
This is who I am. I
And
like
like I
that.
think schools need to be able to say this is who we are.
Mhm.
Like unless you're a private school navigating like, well, we can't decide that. We need to take whoever comes to us. Public schools can say, this is who we are.
Yeah. I know I've even noticed like I don't know if it's always been a thing, but I've really noticed a clear dedication to consistency with whatever the mission statement or like the school statement is, and like whatever they want to be. Like my old schools and we spent a full year changing it, and like our VP was doing like his PhD project on like school culture and like that, like how extensive that process was. Now the school I'm at now, like they spent all of last year, and like every Tuesday and Thursday we do like a homeroom huddle, and it's like this is who we are. This is what we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to be. And I feel like it really is kind of like the maybe just a good reminder for us to have. I'm also when I was kind of emailing with you back and forth before and we talked about
Mm-hmm.
some questions, I'm really excited about this spicy one that you put on
Yeah.
here. And I said, if you could, because this one hit home for me, because I was like, I never
Yeah.
thought I
Yeah.
would see
Yeah.
this one from a professor. And said, if you could
Yes.
throw out one piece of educational jargon forever, what would it be and
Yes.
why? And it just says critical thinking. So
Did I say that?
which is fine. I guess maybe unless that's I guess it says critical thinking. But I can understand how that could be like an overused one. But I guess like maybe if you forgot that you said it, like what
That's
no
so funny. I didn't even know that I said that. I mean, I think critical thinking is good.
yeah. But
I'm
maybe
trying to
like
think
the
of like
way like
why I would
we
have said,
overused it, maybe. Don't mean to
or
throw you under
maybe
the
just
bus here if you forgot.
I love it. I didn't know that I said that. So that's
See,
good. I'm trying
a
to
few
think
weeks
like
later, it's expired.
yeah,
Prime
literally.
example.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
made it work. I
yeah.
feel like maybe like sometimes that critical thinking is just like weaponized as I've thought about it and I'm
Or
decided.
I know more than you, so you have to think
Right.
critically about what I agree on, right? Or what I believe.
Right. Like real critical thinking, I think sometimes comes to that initial idea that I talked about. Are you willing to be wrong when we say that to a student? But then when a student asks that back to me, are you willing to be wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that requires a critical stance, a critical spot for me to think. I thought you were going to say about ungrading,
Oh no,
about how I'm doing
we
ungrading,
can go
which
there
I was
next.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think critical thinking is good, is my ultimate takeaway.
Critical thinking is good. That's the subtitle
That
for
is
this. We're
good.
all
Yeah.
delusional.
Critical thinking
Critical
is
thinking
good.
is good.
Yeah. That's funny.
So
That's
I
so
guess
good.
talk to me. So yeah, critical thinking because I was like, man, I was like, that's all I would talk about for like 3 days. I'm like, what is he gonna say about critical thinking?
Oh
No,
no, that
I
would be
think
scandalous.
I was like, yeah, this is like getting some
Yeah.
real dangerous territory here.
No.
No, that's great. But so ungrading. So first off, I'll kind
Yes.
of say in my new kind of education context, because like I said, like I
Yeah.
don't do any formalized grading as a support teacher. Like I'm kind of doing like my own thing with STIPs and that kind of stuff. But so yeah,
Right.
like I said, I don't do any grades, but like you're still measuring learning in a sense, and you're
Yes.
reviewing. But even
Yeah.
the middle school teachers that I work with, it's like it's kind of annoying because, and I don't know if this is where you were heading with this, but you get a 1, 2, 3, 3+ or 4. Like that's
Right.
kind of the, and then they're like,
Yeah.
it's pretty much A, B plus, B, C, D, whatever. So
Yeah.
I guess like talk to me about ungrading and why that's maybe one of your not critical thinking or something that you
Not
thought
critical
critically
thinking.
about.
What would I get rid of though in education would be grades. Like I would say new and to be like even more specific, it's not feedback, measurement, whatever. What I would get rid of is the numeric and letter grading systems, like specifically, and how those are ranking systems, which is different than feedback systems. I love feedback. I love assessment. I love like cultures of assessment. Grades are harmful to learning. They are not neutral even. I would say they are harmful, and that there is research that goes to support that grades are harmful, especially for marginalized and equity-seeking students. Like we are trying to quantify human intelligence, which I think is a very bold move that we can do in like a
Yep.
grade 3 classroom and be like, "That's a 68,"
Like you just
and it
turned
has
8, sit down for an
right.
hour.
It's
Okay.
wild.
It's kind of
It's
crazy. I nailed my
wild.
math one back in grade 3, but no big deal. That's where I
I
peaked.
know.
Said, "Oh, it's all downhill
Which
after
is
that."
What's funny is, man, can we ever, if I say, tell me the story of your school, you can tell me what you got on a grade 7 math test. You can tell me what you got on your
Yeah.
diplomas. You can tell me so much. If I tell you, like, what was your favorite lesson in English, you're like, here's a book we read.
Yeah, Into the Wild. That's what comes to mind for me. Yeah, or
You can
1984.
remember
Those are the two
grades.
books.
Right. I remember, like, maybe even like Spark Notesing it the night before
Yeah.
and not really reading it,
Yeah.
like, because it was about chasing grades.
Mm-hmm.
It was about chasing grades. And so I'm like, I'm really going gradeless in a lot of my classes, including my university classes, which means I do something called delay the grade. Like I don't give the numeric grade, but I give lots of feedback, and it's way more work, but
Mm-hmm.
there's way more learning. And
Yeah.
so like, I think grades are, they're not good for learning. In fact, we know that when you see a number beside the feedback, you disengage from the feedback.
Yes, absolutely. That's the honestly, because what I started to do, and this is probably more so me kind of, I don't want to say lazy, because I would say obviously every teacher wants to try to maximize like time with their family, like kind of having, especially in like a heavy humanities workload. Like I taught all social. I mean, I sit down on a
Yeah.
Saturday, I mark essays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I've
Same.
marked like 38. And I'm like, oh my God, I still have
Maybe.
80 of these left. And I'm like, this is, well, if I'm doing like 38, probably still not great. Like it's probably still not like as much feedback as I could have. But then I found I started using some class time during like some project based work to, I would say, you know what? If you guys want feedback with your essay, I'll sit with you right now. Let's get a lineup going. We can talk. I started doing a thing where I would take, this is obviously before ChatGPT was used as much, but I would take like, obviously you have Alberta in a sense was almost kind of easy because you had the excellent, the proficient, and the satisfactory, and
Yeah.
the diploma exemplars from before, and you're like, okay, this is what I see you being relative to these standards, and that was actually like I would find examples from our class and take names out and make some adjustments and actually
Hmm.
demonstrate why I thought the grade was that way. But you almost had the blueprint for you, and I will be completely
Totally.
honest. This is something where, again, like I'm willing to be wrong. I just don't know how to do it in the sense of like if you were to ask me, like Lucas, how would you like we want you to teach at University of Lethbridge September 1st, an online course. Like, how would you design a course with assessment with no scores? I wouldn't know how to do it. So I guess walk me through
Hmm.
like what kind of assessments are you doing? Because it's still essays, but you're just not like giving the grade, or like what kind of projects are you doing? Because I guess the way that I envision myself, hopefully in 10 years, if I was, or look at me in 10 years when I'm older and wiser for whatever reason,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
what are like, I just assume that my pedagogical variety will be so much broader at that time and that I'll actually be better at giving assessment on that broadness of my pedagogy. So I guess, I know I'm throwing a lot at you there again,
Hmm.
but
No, that's
what are
good.
some thoughts about how you've constructed your courses, if you even kind of think of it as like a starting and ending of a course? But like what are your thoughts there?
Like tangibly ungrading is a set of practices that just reject ranking and rating, which are different. Ranking and rating are the 0 to 100 system and the F to A plus system. So that is how I like reject it. I explain to students about grades. Like we never talk to students about grades. Tell me your story about grades. Tell me about you and this, you're bad at English. Tell me about
Yeah,
what it
I'm
means to be
going
bad at that.
GPA, I'm going 62
Yeah.
in math in grade 12. Like those are things that are coming to my head.
Yes. Like tell me about how you feel about grades. And because the first
Love when
time
I get
that
a
we
good one.
taught, yeah, love when I get a good one. And so we're just playing school and I'm holding a Cheeto and then you have to like try and catch it and keep moving around, which is like a game. So instead I say, like when I was doing my PhD at U of A, the prof said like everyone's gonna get an A or an A plus. Okay. So now with that out of it, what experiments do we want to do? Like what kind of thinking do we want to do? Students avoid
It's
risk
actually
when there is a
freeing.
numeric grade.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
freeing.
they avoid risk. They avoid risk. They have no intrinsic motivation, and we're ultimately trying to make lifelong learners, right? But when we take away the grade, it forces us to look at our syllabi,
It's
to
scary.
look at our curriculum, and say, do I have something worth teaching? And so if I can't make that argument, and that's often what profs will say to me, I presented on this at the university, and I think it was a Chem 100 prof saying like, well, how am I going to get them to like come to class? How am I going to get them to pay attention? And I was like, maybe like, can you argue for this content then outside of grades? And he said, yeah, I could. And I said, are you? And he was like, no. I'm like, right. I bet you could argue for why you need chemistry, why you need to know, but you're not, which is like, so now we just have extrinsic motivation going.
And that's almost
It
kind
is
of the
tough.
battle too. Like, because I guess my immediate thought of like, I kind of started to get tired of like trying to justify myself every day. But I think that kind
Right.
of is the life of the teacher. But I'm like, damn it, guys. Like it's November 6th. Like we're in unit 3 or unit 2B in grade 30-1 social. Like this is just what we're doing and we're going to go through it. But like I've been talking about why like the individualism and collectivism is important, blah, blah, blah. Like for 2 months now, like let's just get through our session on the New Deal. So I'm kind of thinking like, where would I be in November in my head right now and those courses?
But what if it wasn't for numeric grades? Like,
I know.
wouldn't you just be like, we'll do mastery, competency based learning?
Yeah.
Like, when we're done, we're done.
Yeah. And
We
that's
take the time.
That's scary. That's scary. So tell me
That
more.
is so scary. It is like to lean into going gradeless is like a gradual. It's not the same for everybody. For me, I think like Jesse Stommel's work I really like. Derek Mason at the University of Calgary, who's at the Taylor Institute, has done some cool thinking around it too. And it's a set of practices. So how I do it is you get a grade twice at midterm and final. You have opportunities for a grade twice. It's the same like outcomes, learning outcomes. You reflect on it and you choose what you believe your grade is. After we go through like, this is your area of strength, areas of growth, blah, blah, blah. You've had lots of feedback throughout it. Then you decide on a grade if you want one at midterm. By the time that we get to midterm, I have maybe 10 out of 30 students who want a numeric grade. And
You give them the option to get a grade.
yeah. Or we can just have a midterm one-on-one conference where we talk more. Now the story is about you need to work on sentence structure. You need to be able to like cite using APA. That becomes their area of growth rather than I have a 78. And I just like always kind of get 78 in English, 10, 20. I don't really know how to improve. This is what I get in English. Now we're changing the story that you like know your areas of growth. And they will often be
I was just
excited
going
by
to say, no one ever says, like, what's your story of English 30? It's not like, oh, I developed this love for literature and like dystopian novels. It's like,
Never.
oh, I got a 93. I got into my like engineering program. Done. Like that's kind
all
of
that matters.
It's an obstacle rather than like something to engage with, which is, I feel like most of education is an obstacle. Like I don't know why that is the way, but we reward that still. And I know that this is the obvious pushback that like anyone with ungrading is going to get, because I've even had this conversation with like some VPs and principals like in Alberta. They said like, I think Ontario was starting to remove their provincial assessment, or I think it was during COVID when like, because it was, the argument came down to, it was like, if I have you, for example, and your class is really hard and really strict and I get a 71, then Mr. Clark's super chill and I got a 95. But then we both apply on our university application. Like the diploma was almost like the great equalizer to show what you actually got. And that was the argument, right? That was the argument for which like, from a statistics standpoint, like again, like if you want to listen to my conversation with Tim Coates, who kind of created those essays for a long time, like I was drinking the Kool-Aid a bit, but then you get to this like ungrading part, which actually does make so much more sense because you're actually having to deal with like problems you can't just like write an essay about and move on. And so how would you then, like if tomorrow they said, you know what, like we're gonna get rid of all like traditional grading at all universities and all high schools, like how would you, I guess, like who gets into the medical school program? And like, and I know all of these programs are designed for that system. And so I guess what have you learned, read about, or had thought about in that regard? Like that's like an overarching like international problem. Like I'm not saying that like we would have all the answers here, but
I think like we actually know lots of universities that are going gradeless. Tons. Ivy League schools in the US, we have tons of schools that are going gradeless. Many law schools and medical schools in Canada to date are gradeless.
I didn't know that.
Including U of A. Yeah.
Okay.
So like we are now realizing that like pass fail is actually all we need to know about someone. The rest come from like holistic admission. So like interviews, they're called mock mini interviews or MMIs, or the Casper test. Like there's way more like I would say valid, reliable, and more importantly, equitable ways than ranking and rating of like 78, 77, et cetera, et cetera.
You're almost seeking out the intrinsic in a sense by doing that. Is that kind of the argument?
Yes. Like anyone can know the content, like to get into medical school. They teach you anatomy in the first year. Like they start from square one. So about getting in is like they want like a lot of personable people who can problem solve and think on the fly, which is why the interviews matter so much. So I'm like, the grades can get away. We are one of, I think, the only province that have diploma exams left. I don't know about Atlantic Canada.
I think so. But no, like, and so on the flip side of that, because I'll say, someone told me, again, I'm only in a middle school in New Brunswick, don't want to speak on the behalf of the system by any means, but I think someone told me that like to prove to graduate, like I'm trying to get my little quotations
Right.
in here
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. Yeah.
camera. It's like a very short, like 20 multiple choice question test that everyone has to pass for like a level of English proficiency. So it's almost like, whoa, like what are we? Because I think what starts to happen, what I kind of notice is that like when the system begins to embrace like this ungrading, it's like they still do everything graded, but it's just it's okay if you don't get an 80. Like you still get the 60s and the 70s and the 85s, but like that's okay. But and that almost seems like you're almost that's like almost even more so missing the point. It's like you're still doing the same methods, but you're just saying
Totally.
it's okay if you don't get it. Yeah.
Right. And like you can have a rubric all you want, and this is like purple hippo and yellow giraffe. And the kids know it's code for a 3 and a 4 and a
Yes.
2.
Yes.
So like it's actually still ranking no matter, and
Yeah.
go look at elementary report cards. They're like,
Yeah.
it's an E.
Yeah.
I'm like, we know that's a 5 out of 5. Like we know, like you can, and the kids are like decoding it to be like, are you in the giraffe group?
Yeah.
So as much as we're like, we can't dress up grades. There's actually no amount of dress
Yeah.
up that will take away the harm of ranking
Yeah.
and rating students.
Yeah.
And I would go so far as to say liking students. Like, do you like their work?
Yeah.
That's often what's happening, at least in the humanities, that like we're for the first time acknowledging, like, do you like this essay? Does it like align with your ideologic values? What is being underneath? I think liking students, especially when it comes to things like participation, those become like quite like, tell me how you're ranking that.
Because honestly, some of my favorite assignments that I've ever done were like massive group projects where we did self-grading and peer grading.
Same.
I think you actually
I'm letting out the dog.
That's okay. Yeah, you're good. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. You go. Go.
Now everyone can have just like the tour of my house. I don't know.
But
because it's either that or like the 1-year-old dog decides to take a giant poop in the house, and then
it's okay.
we just like.
No, I've always been a cat guy myself, so no dogs here at the Clark household. I said my wife and I said that our next pet would be a kid, and that one's coming in August here. So that's
Congrats!
Thank you.
That's
but
huge.
It's
huge.
Yeah, it's sweet. Yeah, I can't wait. But it's so maybe we'll get a dog in like 10, 12 years when the kid can take it out. But yeah. But for now, no dogs or cats. But
that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. It's
good?
Like this idea of like nothing will get rid of the ranking and rating other than getting rid of it, and it doesn't negate learning; it enhances it. I mean, I just encourage people at the very, very least, talk about grades with your students beyond threatening. Like the test is on Monday, we need to study. A lot of you are in a position that you need to study is a threat. That's a threat. Versus how do grades make you feel? Like if you look back and you can only remember that you got a 93 in English, that means we're focusing too much on assessment, not on learning, because you can't tell me a lesson from English.
Because I remember like I did English myself. I upgraded it after I graduated. My dad was sick in high school, the whole thing, but I upgraded after, and I got I was at SAIT and did the English equivalent. And yeah, I did like Mount Royal, SAIT, U of C in the matter of like 8 months. Like I was at each one for like different courses. It was like a gong show of a year, but I did the English equivalent. And honestly, now that I'm just kind of triggering this, like I remember our English teacher was legit. Like she was such a nice woman, was a great teacher. But I remember the day that I don't know what I think he was like, I don't want to say a dean, but he was the leader of academic upgrading. Like that was his kind of role.
Yeah, right.
And he was doing an evaluation of her, and she was like out of breath, and like her face was so red the entire lesson. Like she was a completely different person when she was, but clearly, and I actually knew the guy because I was doing a math course and I had actually had a few conversations with him. And thank God he didn't let me take Math 30-1 because I wasn't ready for it. But so I was actually chatting with him beforehand. Like, we were having a great conversation. Then all of a sudden the lesson started and I was pumped. I was like, oh, I'm into this. Like, I liked English. And then she was like so different. I'm like, what is going on in here? Like, why is she acting so weird? And like, I don't know, but clearly she was just being evaluated by him. But that's kind of triggered a story for me. But again, all I think about, like you said, is my mark
That
in
is
that class.
related, though. That is related because look, he comes away from her being like, that's who she is as a teacher.
Yes, and that's like
And it's like,
so
that actually is not true
not
at all
at
who she
all.
is as a teacher. But that's what was evaluated. But what if she got to decide what her grade was and her
Yep.
evaluation? Like, what if we just trusted students? Like around grades, we're like, well, they're gonna, they're gonna play the system. My
They
job is actually
always
so
find
much
a way.
easier.
It's so frustrating. Like they always find a way. Not frustrating. It's like it almost makes everything point back to this. Let's try to find a way that we can actually learn without making the grades the primary concern, because the kids are going to find a
Yes,
way to
to hack it.
Like if I'm pretending to teach and you're pretending to learn, it's like, again, we're just performing for each other. Like, what are we actually doing here?
What
And
are we
so
doing?
that kind of goes back to the original question of, like, if you don't mind me asking, because I don't want to expose your syllabus by any means.
Do it. Did you find my syllabus?
No.
Oh,
I'm just wondering, like, what types of
like what do I?
like what is is it a project? Like what? Again,
The grade.
another Kent Denhire quote in a hierism. He said, "Pedagogy is what you have the students do with the information you give them." And that was like the most simple definition for what pedagogy is. But like, I really embody that as like, okay, there's a certain information and outcomes that are kind of maybe given to me as like the guidelines for a course. And now it's my job to figure out like how to make sure they learn that organically. What are some things that maybe you've tried and like utterly failed, or things that you think that actually work for kind of that university level or even like high school level?
I mean, a couple things like participation is a heavy grade, and
Like
you
30%.
decide
What
or
so are you doing
25
percent? Because you're still doing percentages, right? Like you kind of have to stay
of
within.
categories of how much things are worth. But it's kind of arbitrary because you can participate in lots of ways, right? Like that's UDL. You can meet. I care more about like outcomes that you're meeting than like this assignment's worth this amount. But oftentimes assignments will correlate with outcomes. But that said, I have a participation grade. They decide it, and I discuss that with them. And people say, "Well, don't they just put 95%?" It's like it's
Probably
pretty
never.
awkward, actually, to come to me on a one-on-one
Like,
and be like, "I'm a
perfect.
95%," and
I
I'm
know
like, "Who are
everything.
you? We've never met. Like, we haven't seen you in months."
Yep.
They're honest. And isn't that what we want? Like some metacognition around our learning, some self-awareness. There is actually no other place in the world where you get ranked and rated beyond the public schools. Like you do not go into a performance review as a teacher. And she's like, you got an 83 on TQS number 4. You have an 82.
So I'll tell you, I was just evaluated a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And it was, I didn't even know what the New Brunswick's, because again, like TQS, that's like, again, that's in my brain. That's the whole thing.
Right. Same.
There's a book. It's like for enhancing teaching practice or something. That's the kind of what they base it off of here in New Brunswick. Got like a cool clock on it. I mean, very cool. But it was
a book.
Very cool. It was 4 categories, and I was asked to assess myself on, I think, 20 separate individual outcomes in 4 domains. And I had to give myself a grade of unsatisfactory, I think proficient, and distinguished. Those were the 4. But I assessed myself, and I would say like half of them, I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm still pretty new. I'd say I'm still pretty basic at this, maybe proficient at a few things, but like no one's going distinguished. Like no honest teacher, because again, like we know that's not. But in a weird way, like we were almost kind of told, because we're on like I had a continuing in Alberta. When you move here, like you start on a D contract, like the temporary one. But I was kind of told like these things actually, like, they play a pretty significant role in like what you're now. Even if I put basic for myself, my principal might put proficient, or they might put basic. Like, you know, like that's kind of, they take yours to influence theirs is kind of the argument. But
yeah, I do that too. That's same process.
Okay, yeah, and yes, and
same
I think that's the best conversation for feedback, I think.
But the bedrock is they trust you. They trust that you know your practice better than they do after watching it twice.
Yes.
So like the disposition is like, we trust you. Like you know what is a stretch for you and what is not. So when I ask like in participation, I also do something called labor-based grading, which is
Oh,
like if
okay.
you did the labor, you just get 100. It's not whether I think it's good or bad. I want mistakes because mistakes mean learning. So you just get the grade. You just get 100 if you do. I'm so confident sometimes in my learning design, like for writing, the writing process, that if you just engage with it, I'll give you the grade. If you just engage with this process and then you self-reflect, which takes away the like, what is he looking for? I mean, think about in English how they're like, in William Shakespeare's incredible and masterful script, Macbeth, I'm like, there's no way you think it's good.
I already felt my
Like,
eyes
isn't it
glaze
funny?
over just hearing you say that. I'm like, oh god,
Right.
now I have to read
Like they have
35
to
of these.
pretend they liked it. They have to
Yes.
pretend it was like amazing
Yeah.
because they're performing for me. Right?
This was incredible.
Yeah, they're like, and his earth-shattering use of onomatopoeia.
George
I'm like,
Orwell. Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
okay.
really? Like, tell me why it sucked. I would
Yeah.
rather read that paper, but because that would result in a bad grade. Like when our relationship is like contingent on the fact that I grade you, we don't have rapport. We have a transaction where everybody knows who's who. And the grades are the cash, right?
Yeah. And I made a reel the other like probably 6 months ago.
Cool.
And I know I'm a super
Yeah,
hip guy.
indie.
And
Yeah,
so indie. Yeah,
I
I had to
love
move
it.
out of Alberta. Yeah. But no, I was like, I mean, I was joking about like when you're a dedicated relationship builder, you're not going to let any kid get in your way. Like, even though you're starting to get tired of the conversation, like
Yeah.
you're just going to keep going. And one of my former students commented on it, and then they're like, but the student's also doing it because they want the teacher to give them a good grade. I'm like, whoa, like they just totally threw it back at me. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like that kid and I had a great relationship, I think, because he didn't do that good in my class. No, I'm just kidding. But it was
That's funny.
like, it was just like, why is so much of teaching that like what was another teacher said to me, that's the dog and pony show. I still don't even
Mhm.
really know what that expression means, but it sounds cool and it sounds like we're
It
just
sounds
performing
right.
for each other. Yes.
Yes,
It
it
sounds
sounds right.
correct. Yes, that's the
Yeah.
other subtitle for this podcast. Yeah, I just don't really know.
Like, do we have real relationships then?
Yeah.
If everything's about relationships,
Yeah.
I'm like, not
Yeah.
when you dictate my future and the food that might go on my table, which grades
Yeah.
are a stand-in for in our
Yeah.
current like neoliberalist capitalist model. I'm like, do we have a relationship or
Mhm.
do I think we do? They're like, of course you think we do. You don't get graded.
Yeah.
You're in power. Of course you think you're having a hoot.
Whoa, yeah, that's true.
Like,
I feel like I never would have
of
thought
course it
about
feels
that
like
from
that.
our. Yeah, like no one's actually giving me a.
Right.
And so like, I guess, and maybe I'm asking the wrong question, because I guess maybe I'm thinking about going into designing a course for teachers and being like, okay,
Yes.
now there's certain, you're 4 projects away from being a better teacher. Like, how much thought have you put into the, like, what do
Mhm.
you argue for that potentially are, like, in a sense, what learning outcomes have you become more, I guess, not married to, but more dedicated to arguing for?
Discomfort. Like, are you uncomfortable? Are you trying your best? Are you pushing yourself? How can I put a grade on that? Like, when I know what makes a good teacher is one who is in the dirt and it's horrible and I want to quit and they decide to show up the next day and be a learner. How do I put a grade on that? Like when I'm looking for, the question is often asked when you are observing student teachers, what do you look for? My number one thing is rapport, relationships. How do I grade that? They know that. And so like what learner outcomes am I? I'm more committed now to like it is the social emotional skills of teachers to like motivate students, show up for them and be their fiercest advocate. And it is so flattening to the magic of teaching and learning to put a grade on. And so I'm like I'm getting more and more being like I trust what you put there. You know what discomfort looked like for you in this class. Discomfort is like to be challenged, right? And you know what it means to be challenged. How do you think you did? So I'm like,
It's just such
I
a
think that
daunting response. I feel like that would be such a different learning experience, because I think even for myself, like all of the So again, I only graduated from my undergrad after degree in 2022. So I'm only like 3 years out now, fully. 3 years out. It sounds like I'm in prison. But it's but like all of my courses were still like, here's some essays. Maybe actually one project was a structured conversation, which I found to be
I
the
do those too.
most like, because you had to kind of be ready to speak on 5 different questions, but you were chosen for one of them the day of. Now that was, but arguably the best learning. It was the most challenged and uncomfortable that I felt
Yeah.
in a university setting, because you got 4 of your homies on a Zoom. I was in
Yeah.
online education then, which kind of sucked.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I liked it, but I would have preferred to be like in person. Like I'm doing my
Yeah.
master's hopefully next year online, just out of
Where?
necessity, because well,
In what?
New Brunt, so it changes every month. But no, I think with my social background and kind of being in this like new type of weird AST role, like I'm starting
Yeah.
to become really interested in, again, like we're in the country of Canada, but then you've got Alberta that's doing this like completely other different thing. New Brunswick's
Yeah.
doing a completely different thing. Then you're like, oh, the student just moved here from Nigeria and they're actually 11, but they're doing grade 10. Then it's like, whoa, like I find it very interesting to look at like
Hmm.
how different education is in different contexts and how that context
Cool.
adapts to their local area to develop their own system. So I think it would maybe be like a global search for the best of the best ideas. That's kind of the simplest one, but I think that's like a leadership and admin one, but with like a focus in
At UNB.
yeah. So UNB Fredericton now has like an online program. Um, that's kind of they don't do like anything. I'm in St. John, New Brunswick. As far as I know, they don't do
Yes.
anything in person. I would rather have in person learning. I mean, out of having a little one coming soon, I think that could be it could be
Yes,
cool.
actually.
It sounds cool. Like it sounds to me interesting to kind of and again, like we're all thinking about like what does my career also look like 10, 15 years from now. I think that could open a lot of cool doors too for maybe travel and do some research
It'll
and stuff
change
too.
the game.
So like
You
yeah,
will
that'd be
love
fun.
it.
That'd be fun.
It's
Yeah.
every teacher should go back and go to grad school.
Yeah. And
Like,
like to me it was
and they're
never
all
a matter of if, it was always a matter of when. I mean, that's kind of been
mm,
my whole shtick. But going into a doctorate program seems daunting. And I guess maybe like I don't know how much time you have left here, and I can edit this little part out,
yeah.
but I just know, how did you go about entering a doctoral program? I guess my question for you would be like, what made you kind of switch doctoral programs? Was it like changing
Mm,
of supervisor, changing of topic? And
mhm.
then what do you, because I guess all I ever really hear about when it comes to becoming or like writing a doctorate or writing a thesis is you just defend it after like the end of 6 years of just like being super stressed out. Like, what is the actual day to
Right.
day, year to year kind of movement for what you're kind of pursuing?
That's such a good question. There's such a hidden curriculum and no one really talks about it. Uh,
Classic.
like doing your master's is like it's like your master's,
Yeah.
honestly. It's very similar. It's like coursework. It's not hard theoretically. It's maybe a bit more philosophical than a master's degree in that like you're thinking beyond classroom practice, you're thinking about like what are the social political forces outside of schools. But like it's still pretty related. The difference between the PhD program that I was doing at the U of A with the Doctor of Education program at Western that I'm enrolled in now. The PhD program at U of A is a theoretical model. It's about research. You like do 2 years coursework, then you're done. You take something called comps or a candidacy exam, and then you become a PhD candidate. And then you begin your doctoral research, which is like whatever that is. And then you defend at the end of that. And that's like 6 to 7 years was our departmental
Yeah.
average for
Wow.
that. The Ed.D program
Mhm.
is very professionally based. It is a doctor of education. You
Yeah.
are like doing a problem of practice. You make organizational improvement plans. You do create curriculums. The dissertation's not theoretical purely. You use secondary data, and everyone goes through as a cohort, and it's only 3 years.
Okay. Because,
So,
and is like, I'm going to ask you a dangerous question here. Like,
mhm.
is one better than the other? Because I've heard that kind of distinguishing of like some people have a PhD, some have like the E, like it's like an EDD, right? It's like an
Yeah.
E small d big D, and like so. Because again, like, is it more so a PhD? Is it you more so want to work higher up at the university level versus like an ed doctorate's kind of more at the district? And like that's what I've been told. I don't know if that's true. That's just
Yeah.
like the rumblings of the narratives about each type of program, regardless of institution. That's just
Yeah.
the comments on the program.
It depends. Like the EdD was most popularized at Harvard, right? Like they
Okay, I didn't know that.
started the EDD program, which is now part of the Carnegie Project on the education doctorate, which is EDD programs are huge in the States, more common in many ways than a PhD in education or seen similarly. In Canada, though, it is the EdD is more professionally focused. However, there's a rise of teaching stream jobs in universities. And if you
What do
just
you
want
mean?
to be an instructor, teaching stream is like the professoriate, that the professor stream that is not just about research and teaching. It's actually mostly just teaching. They're called professors of teaching or teaching professors. And they're big. There was them at U of T when I was there, at UBC when I was there. And a lot of people are getting their PhD and just teaching full time in the university.
Hmm.
And so they're like, why did I do a research based degree to teach full time?
Yeah.
And so the PhD is for people who want to have research programs, who want to do educational
Okay.
research. Whereas the EdD is if you want to do applied academic research. And like, I would say, really, like you can teach university with either. You have the same theoretical knowledge. You do not have the same research training, though, in my
Okay.
opinion, in
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
The PhD will give you a larger methodological toolkit, but the EdD will teach you, like you could make a curriculum document for your district as your final EdD. It's called a dissertation in practice. It's way more.
Okay. Cool.
I
All
recommend
right.
everyone do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see like
Do
I,
it.
I'm only choosing UNB because it's kind of closest to home here, and I've already been in talks with a professor who's hopefully going to come on the podcast in the summer, which is kind of a cool. Like I
Oh,
never like kind of going into a master's like while also doing a podcast. I feel like I can like I do like
you
Clark
should
notes where
do.
I do like. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, you have to do the podcast through your master's or something, or
Oh
make
yeah,
that like your thesis.
everything new I'm learning, that's going directly into like just the fact that I can just speak about what I'm learning, just to think out loud, I think is be such a cool like
Yeah.
thing to keep going because people are like, are you sure you can do this while you're doing your master's? Where I'm like, this is literally it. Like this is what I'm trying to do.
You
But anyway,
You should look into Hannah McGregor's work. She's at SFU and she has long argued for podcasts as equally as valid as research articles and how
okay,
they
all
can
right,
also be peer reviewed. And she had a really great podcast where
okay.
she's now at, SFU. And she talks about how like podcast pedagogy, like, yeah, you would
Oh yeah,
rock that.
you can do the transcript and put it into a chat GPT can put it into an article for you. I promise I have not done that. But
That's the one.
okay. So I feel like we can go all day here, but
Yes,
I
I
got
know.
two more questions for you just to kind of
Okay,
wrap
yeah.
this up. So
Yes.
every episode, I end the podcast off with the same two quotes. I'm a big time quote guy, and I never put them in the question list so that I know they're fresh when you hear it.
Mm,
One of the quotes is, I mean, talking to you, I mean, we just met. We're here talking for an hour and a half. Both of us clearly have something to do with trying to build relationships. It's kind of our whole shtick.
mhm.
But the quote is, "Do not let school get in the way of your education," which I think is kind of the
Mm,
whole,
that's
also like
good.
the ungrading thing that we've been talking about. And so I see someone like yourself, obviously very successful in what you're trying to pursue and very personable. What are the things that you think have brought you to this point, that you think have made you successful, that you would not necessarily have learned in a classroom?
That's a great
It
question.
hits you hard.
I
The
truly
first time I heard
believe
that, I
that
was like, yeah.
like what has made me successful honestly is my like social and emotional skills. Like I think that a lot of people can do the content, to be honest. I think like if you want content, like Khan Academy is going to do it for you better than I will. Like if you're looking for like being in community, having messy conversations, having someone who can motivate you, that's what I wanted to be as a teacher. And that's where I've seen success, not in content knowledge. And the more that I go to school, the less I know. But I agree that like, I've started to now see school and education differently, but I'm also trying to make school more like education and like some subtle moves, like caring for your students, talking about love in the classroom, all the things that like matter most to me. I feel that has brought me success and helped me be the best teacher ever. Is
I
like
love that.
not through is like through following my gut, being human with other people, not like seeing this work as a technician,
Yeah.
but as like a messy human
As a
who like
messy
cares
human,
for
I
people.
like that.
Yeah.
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 All right, and our that's beautiful. And our last quote is somewhat on a similar sense, but it's education is what remains once one forgets everything that they learned in school. So,
Obvious.
what is it that you want people to take away from their time with you specifically that they won't get anywhere else?
That you could take risks with me, that my space was a lab to try on the world, that this was a rehearsal hall for life where we let each other fumble and make mistakes. And I mean, I teach the course I teach right now, gender and sexuality in education. They come in being like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm like, let's all say the wrong thing today so that we can like fumble together. Because what you're going to
Yeah.
remember is how you felt in the room. I want you to
You
have
let the
this like
guard down. Yeah.
unshakable, yeah,
Yeah.
surety that like I'm
Yeah.
trying to build your teacher intuition as a student. You can trust it. Like, so you're going to remember taking risks, fumbling, and like getting into the dirt of this work. I learn every day what it means to teach and teach well. And if someone came to me tomorrow and was like, this is how you do teaching, and you know, to be quite honest, I would warn people, you should be wary of those people, of who tell you this
Yes.
is this
Oh
is
yeah.
what exactly good teaching is.
It was it was like the best one for imposter syndrome was like I would beware of people who do not have imposter syndrome. That was kind of
Right.
like the main thing I heard. Again, another higherism there. I know they all come out. I don't know why
Yeah.
they all do that Clark notes just based on what I heard from that one professor. But anyway,
I
um,
love that.
yeah, Brent
Yeah.
Saccucci, my friend.
You're
Thank you
so
so
great.
much
Thank
for
you.
coming
You're
on.
doing such good
Stop.
work.
Oh,
You're
thank you.
having such cool conversations. You're so cool. Like I
Oh my
wish
God.
we like could hang out and we could just like there's so much to talk about, and there's so many teachers probably who are so thirsty for these conversations, and you've like catalyzed and brought together lots of really cool thinkers and educators that like I think you're probably being played in more cars while more people are prepping their meals for the week than you realize, because it's like this is a cool conversation to have,
Well,
and it's an
one
impact.
can only hope. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But Brent Saccucci, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. And tell me, are we when does it come out?